I found two long-eared owls and they're in a lot of vegetation, so I can't get a decent picture of them, but I'm absolutely thrilled to see them this close. So I'm going to watch them for a bit longer and then I'll continue walking around on this very cold December morning. 1st of December I'm recording today. So yeah, lovely start to this morning. So I've just got back home and I'm bringing up my hard drive. Yeah, I just thought it'd be really interesting to go back to where this all began, which is roughly a decade now. So around 2012, 2013 was the time where I was interested in photography in general. There wasn't one theme that I really wanted to stick to at the time. So I remember like volunteering to do local sports events, sports photography, I've done a few weddings in that time. I also did quite a few monthly studio workshops with models. So at the time I was sort of seeing what was available and seeing which genre of photography I was interested in. And when it came to wanting to photograph animals, it often involved going to local animal parks or local zoos where they held photography workshops. And I think they're really good for those who are looking to get into something like wildlife photography, to get to know the subject of an animal. Obviously wild versus captive are very much different into how they behave, but it's a good opportunity for people to get to know a subject and to sort of learn the ways of how you would go about photographing an animal. So I remember this one, I'm sure this was 2012, brought it out and it was basically the case of just photographing it as it was. So I definitely cropped down a lot. I may have had a wider lens at the time, so I cropped it down. I cut out the feet for some reason. Maybe I just didn't want the fake post to be visible. And yeah, it was very much just snapping away when the animal was looking at me. A little bit blurry, that one. And yeah, again, it's like an action shot, but I very heavily cropped in. And I probably wasn't aware of depth of field at the time either. But I liked it at the time. Again, it wasn't a wild animal, but to be in such an environment where I had the opportunity to photograph one in the open with clear views, it's nice. I've done a couple of other wildlife themed workshops since then, but as you'll well know, I very much enjoy photographing the wildlife. Yeah, it was a nice start to sort of knowing that photographing animals and later on wildlife is something that I definitely wanted to do. So this is when I first learnt about watermarks. A lot of these original files I can't seem to find at the moment, and this is obviously one that I've cropped down, I've edited, and I've plastered a not very pleasing watermark over it. This was an opportunity I had. A local wildlife photographer had a few hides set up around the local area, and while I was studying in college at the time, I had the opportunity to go out to some of the hides and just to see what it was like photographing wildlife in this way. So this is a reed warbler nest. I think there was 3 chicks in this nest, and I was in a natural hide. I wasn't in a pop-up one as far as I'm aware. It was all like bent over branches and leaves covering where I was sitting. And I must have been in there for about 2 hours. So this was probably one of the first occasions where I learnt about the art of patience. The editing skills are very much beginners. I could see quite a few highlighted areas burnt out, and the saturation's way past what it naturally would be. The greens are very plasticky green. And again, I cropped it in really close to the top of the bird's head. So again, it's just where I was at the time, and it was all a learning process. Again, this one where one of the reed warbler chicks were looking at me, heavily cropped down, overly saturated, highlights burnt out, and that watermark. I probably liked it at the time, but now it's very distracting. But like I said, it was a really nice experience to have, and yeah, around this time, 2012, 2013 was the start of me getting interested in wildlife photography. Again, it's nice to look back on and to see where, for me, this journey began. But yeah, we're gonna go and look at 2015, and this was the very first time that I took a trip to the Isle of Mull. Okay, so this was during the time, I think it must have been later in June, where the puffling chicks would have hatched and they'd be asking for food from the adults, and they were coming in, the adults were coming in with lots of sand eels in their mouths. So a really nice opportunity to get a picture for myself, and I like that I've got quite low to the ground for this shot to get eye level with the bird. I'm quite happy that I learnt about that at the time, and the depth of field is quite nice. You can tell that there's obviously grass in the background, and the editing is probably a little bit too contrasty for me now, but all the birds in focus, and like I said, the greens aren't too green this time, so I've definitely learnt a bit more about how to edit a photo in the time from 2013 to 2015. And yeah, I just like this shot to get the whole bird in the frame and to include a bit of the environment as well. I think looking at my work now, I like to include quite a bit of an environment with the animal or bird. Okay, so yeah, this one again, haven't got the green in the background. It was obviously taken on a cloudy day, and the sea behind isn't blue. I've got a weird like green patch. Not quite sure what's going on there. I don't know if I did something to the colours or not. But the bird again is very contrasted. It has got detail, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of life in the eyes, especially the one on its right hand side. There isn't that little glare of lights that makes, you know, the bird's obviously alive, but having that little glint in the eye, it just makes the eyes stand out even more. But it's still nice and central to the frame, and I kind of like that there's rocks in the background to sort of break up the background, because if it was all grey, it would look very much monotone. Okay, so 2016, I went on one of my first photography workshop group trips. This was the first time of me going to Richmond Park to photograph the red deer rut, and I remember it being quite a warm, mild, I think this was in October, so there wasn't a lot of rutting going on, nothing compared to what I saw last year. But there was some deer, there was some stags around, they were bellowing, and this one I remember taking. I really like that it's an action shot, that the grass is being pulled up by the antlers, but it's very saturated again. It must have just been a cloudy day and I wanted more the greens and the yellows to come through, but I don't know if that's a bit too much saturation. But again, it's a nice action shot. Got one of a larger stag laying down, and again, I don't remember having a clear idea of the pictures I wanted to take. I just took whatever I thought was good at the time. So this stag, he was laying down, he wasn't doing an awful lot, so I remember taking lots of pictures of this portrait shot where his head is directly facing me, and the antlers are got a decent amount of space away from the frame itself. Colours aren't too saturated here, but they definitely look a lot more punchy than what I think they were on the day, and obviously the coat of it is very red in comparison, but I quite like that I went for this shot. I probably could have gone down with going a bit lower to the ground, but I remember being told at the time to be very wary about the stags that were walking around, so I didn't want to be laying down and then end up having to try and get up and run away if the need came. I remember taking this one. This was not long after we arrived in the morning. It just rained as well. And yeah, this was just a sweet moment with a stag and a doe. So yeah, I was obviously down low for this one again to try and get eye level. Again, it's something that I've picked up along the way and I use whenever I can, whenever the situation allows. Little bit too punchy with the colours again, but like I said, I think it was a cloudy day and I just wanted the colours to pop a little bit more. I'd probably, if I was to re-edit it again, tone it down a bit. But yeah, it's a nice also rule of thirds. This was something else that I picked up, you know, when I was developing more of my style. And so we got the grass in the first third, then we got the bodies of the stag and the doe in the middle, and then the antlers and the trees on the top half. So I was definitely learning something along this time. So going into 2017 onwards, this was the core years of me getting really involved with wildlife photography. I was going to multiple locations whenever I had free time in between studying and doing a part-time job, and I was doing an awful lot more research into where I could find certain species. So next we'll go to June of 2017, if I can find it. Oh, wow, I haven't seen this shot for a while. This was probably one of the best years I recall of seeing some of the owl species in the area. And I remember getting up, this must have been around sunrise, to watch the barn owls. And I took this shot at some point. You can tell it's the barn owl from its silhouette, and it's also got a vole of some kind in its talons. And we got the bank that's sort of breaking up the background a bit as it flies away. Yeah, I still like this shot, and I must have loved it at the time, but it's been a long time since I've seen this picture, and yeah, I really like the sort of silhouette of it. The colours aren't too punchy. It tells that you know, it's an early sunrise coming up, there's a bit of yellow in the sky, and you've got the grass being lit up by the sunrise as well. But yeah, that bird is in as much focus as it could be as it was flying off. So yeah, it's really nice to look back on the shot like that, and to know that there's always going to be opportunities that take you by surprise and you come away with something that you're really quite proud of, and most of the time it can be down to luck. But yeah, really nice shot, really nice one to look back on. I'm really hoping that I can get back out soon to find barn owls again, and hopefully short-eared owls. There's a little bit of an influx of them coming through from Scandinavia. They've been all up and down the northeast coast, so they could head down my way. That would be really nice. And that reminds me, there was a time where I did see a short-eared owl really close. Wow, yeah, so this was probably the first ever encounter I had with a short-eared owl, and it was hunting along the bank, and then it stopped. It landed on this part of the fence directly opposite me. I was in my car, I was using it as a hide, and this was at sunset, so the sun was behind me and the light was coming on to the owl. And yeah, those eyes are really incredible to look at. I wouldn't want to be on the other end of those if I was a small mammal. But yeah, the colours are really nice. You've got the orange tint in the feathers. The eyes are lit up really well, and there's a nice distance from the owl to the background, which is all like a grassy verge. So yeah, again, another shot I really enjoyed taking. I'm pretty sure this is up in my house printed somewhere. But again, another moment I just did not expect to happen to me, and it was all about right place, right time, and for the owl to land directly opposite. For me to get a shot like this is really nice. So yeah, it gives me motivation to go out and find them again, so I can get an even better shot if I can. So in 2018, I followed a great crested grebe family. So I just kept going back every other week to see what ended up to be 3 chicks being hatched, and I was just watching this family on the river. So the nest was in the middle of a river, and whenever I could I went down to the edge of the water to get as low level as I could, and I obviously still wasn't doing that at the time because there's a lot of water surrounding, and the distance from where the nest was to the bank on the other side, it would have given me more depth of field, but for whatever reason I wasn't getting low enough. So yeah, I just followed this family, and they ended up having 3 chicks. So this is one where it's just 1 adult and the 3 chicks. Again, I wasn't getting low enough with the water, and if I'm able to go out and find them again maybe next year, then I would definitely get as low as I can to the water. There's quite a lot of area that I can either use a pop-up hide in, or use the vegetation around me for cover, so I knew I could be well covered. Another nice one, I must have heavily cropped in, but again, it was more of the idea of wanting to capture a story with this family, rather than thinking about what type of image I wanted to get. But it was nice to get the family together, at least 1 adult with the chicks. And yeah, I remember it must have lasted most of the best part of 2-3 months, just to see these chicks being fed and then exploring, and the adults being nearby. So it's definitely more, you know, just watching this family grow over getting really, really nice pictures. So yeah, it gives me the motivation again to go out, find these local species once again, and knowing what I now know, I can go, I can say, right, I definitely want to get a low angled shot, so there's not as much water in the background. And then we'll head into 2019, and it was like the month of May was the first time that I went to Bempton Cliffs, and this was probably one of the first occasions where I really wanted to develop on taking in-flight shots of birds, and Bempton is absolutely one of the best places, I think, to do that, because you're up on top of the cliff and you've got gannets, guillemots, puffins all flying close to eye level to you, so it's a really good opportunity if you're wanting to get in-flight shots to go to Bempton Cliffs. So this is one that I took of a gannet coming in. got the sea in the background, so nice depth of field. Looks quite, I think, yeah, some of the details have been lost on the bird's head and the front of the outline of the wings, but again, it looks like I was dealing with quite harsh sunlight, and you know, I was more focused on getting a fast enough shutter speed over getting the exposure right, just to get those in-flight shots and really freeze the bird. But yeah, it was a really wonderful experience once again, and it's a bit of a trek. It's about a 3-hour drive for me, but I'd love to go again. And like I said, knowing what I know now, I know what pictures I want to take, I have a better idea what settings to have, and yeah, I'd just love to go back again and you know, relive that first time of seeing them. So again, here it looks like I've gone a little bit overboard with contrast again. Birds look a little bit too vibrant as well on the head. It looks a little bit too plasticky yellow. But again, I was more focused on the fast shutter speed over the exposure, and it wasn't until I came back to edit where, you know, there wasn't an awful lot I could do to save, like the highlights being blown out on the gannets. You know, for them being a notoriously mostly white coloured bird, it was definitely tricky to get the details back on the wings, but regardless, it's something, you know, I learned over time, and yeah, to have the opportunity to go back and do it all again. It's one thing that with wildlife you get at least one chance a year to go see these events and to photograph them, so to know I can go back annually, it's something I love to pick back up again if I find the time to. Yeah, I remember this shot pretty well. I'm sure I wanted to enter it to quite a few competitions this year. So we got a pair of gannets doing a bit of billing in the background, and this one gannet in front. He looks a little bit mean. Looks like he feels like he's been left out. But again, nice sort of colour in the background with the sea. It must have been, looks like the sun went in, so it's a little bit grey. But the flowers in the foreground are really nice, and the crop's quite nice as well. It looks like there was other gannets sort of sitting around, and this was, you know, the shot I wanted to get, with a bit of social interaction and one bird sort of photo bombing in the foreground. But yeah, I really like the detail in this, to get the eyes of the birds on pretty much all 3 birds. You can see the blue outline of the eyes. So yeah, I'd definitely love to go back again to photograph these birds during the breeding season, and again have the opportunity to get more in-flight shots. So yeah, it's just been really nice to look back on where it all began and how it sort of developed, snowballed into, you know, what I'm doing now, what I've learnt over the years. A little bit cringy for some of the images to see what my editing skills were like at the time, but as far as I'm aware, I'm always learning something new in wildlife photography and in photography in general, to improve image quality, to improve how you edit pictures. You know, this is something I picked up for the last decade and I'm still learning. Like I said, really nice to look back on the images I've taken and to see where my passion for wildlife photography began, and I've definitely found a few old favourites which are still my favourites. So yeah, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit of a mix between going out for the 1st of December and then looking back on my work in the early years, but hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. Leave a like down below. Feel free to subscribe if you already aren't. Following from this video, I am going to do my top 12 favourite images of 2023 and probably talk about my plans for 2024. So yeah, with that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye.